Hello and welcome to my latest video. This is the premiere video for TalkWorks. So for this video I want to explain exactly what TalkWorks is, give you some practical examples of how to use it, and then dive deep into what all the parameters do and how it can fit into your workflow. So as you can hear from that example, it's great for evolving string-like choir sounds. So at the heart of TalkWorks we have this vowel bar here, which has 10 definable vowel sounds. So as I increase the mix knob, you should hear the effect being applied. Now at the top centre of the screen here we can pick from various play modes, and that was static vowel mode, but I'm going to switch to static fade and give you another example. And as you can see here, as I'm tapping along the vowel bar, it's morphing slowly between those vowels depending on the play speed. Now the third mode is a random vowel mode, and you can hear that in action now. And again you can control that by the play speed. The fourth option, random glide, glides between vowels. Now this is great for adding movement to your sound, but we can also add random modulation to that too. Now I'm going to leave the sequence mode for now, and I'm going to show you a practical example of how we can use this random sound options within Cubasis. So if we switch to Cubasis, you can see here I have a simple progression of notes, and I'm going to start playing this progression, and I'll slowly fade in the mix knob so we can hear the sound of TalkWorks. Now the important thing here is it's better to use this effect on low sounds, low pitch sounds, because we're emulating the human voice, and the human voice is in that range of 200 Hz to 2 kHz. Okay, so these random fades or random note changes are all synced to the current tempo of the host, so no worries there. So let's take a closer look at the interface. So I've given you an example of the first 4 play modes. One note here is that the initial ones, the static and the static fade, They can be triggered via notes, incoming MIDI notes, so you can actually change vowels within the context of a song. But I want to go to the most exciting mode really, which is the sequencer mode. And I want you to note that every time we change note, this sequence is re-triggered currently. But by doubling the play speed, we can use the whole sequence. And we can click on any one of these sequencer steps and change parameters associated with it. In this case, I've added a little modulation to step 3, and I'm going to add some to step 6. Now, one thing I didn't cover is that if you're using TalkWorks in AUM and you want to use sequencer mode, it's a good idea to ensure that keyboard input is coming into TalkWorks. Once you've routed keyboard input, it can use note on and note off to decide when to re-trigger the sequence. Notice here that loop mode is turned off, which means when we get to the end of the sequence pauses until I press another key. Now you can pick these options from the trigger menu. As you can see, the trigger button at the top is active, which means there's some triggering in place right now, and we're set to trigger immediately on a new key press. So let's tune loop mode back on again, and you'll notice that when we get to the end of the sequence this time, it will wrap around rather than stay still and static on step 8. So before I go over any more technicalities with sequence mode, let's listen to a few examples. You can use the load and save options in the top right corner to load and save your own sequences. You will notice in that sequence that some of the steps have different step lengths. And that sequence had gaps where the step had no vowel sound at all. Now this next sequence features heavily on fading between vowels to create an ambient sound with modulation. Now I think those sequences where you have a mix of transitions between steps work really, really well. So this is another quite fast sequence. And this is a kind of variation on that one at a similar speed. Now most of those examples were using traditional vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U and variants. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an initialized patch here. So we have a basic sequence, and I'm going to use the random feature to generate a completely new set of vowels. And you should notice each time I generate a new set of vowels that everything changes tonally. Now, as well as being able to randomize vowels, we can also randomize vowels and the transitions in the steps in the sequence. And we can even randomize the vowel order and the modulation per step. Now if we take a closer look, tapping on any step in the sequence will display the corresponding vowel, step length, modulation and transition for a step. Now in this example I'm just going to change step 2 to a fade transition. I'll do the same for step 3 so you can hear it. And we'll also add some slow modulation to step 3 as well. So pay close attention as I press a sustained note and it progresses through the sequence. Now when programming a sequence there are a few shortcuts. In particular, if you press and hold, say if I press modulation off, press and hold that, it'll set the modulation off for all steps. Similarly, if I tap and hold step length of 1 and tap and hold a transition type of gap, it will set every element within that sequence to that particular setting. Now listen carefully as I change the transition type for each step. Hopefully you notice the difference between the gap and the swap there. The fade is obvious. The gap has little silence at start and end, whereas the swap very quickly morphs from one to the other. Now if I want to assign a different vowel to step 5, I select step 5, select the vowel and then press the assign button. To change the pattern length, select the step and then hit the set length button. Now as we saw earlier, you can randomize different vowel sounds and you can do that for a specific vowel slot. And if you ever do this, you might want to give that a meaningful description, and you can do that by means of this rename button here. Now finally, some of the interface knob controls and vowel selections can be done by MIDI. So turn on this remote control if you want to do that. If you send notes 0 to 9 to TalkWorks, you can manipulate the vowels in real time. If you go into the help, there is a section in here that outlines the various CCs that can be sent to control various knobs. So that's just about it for now. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.